Cool. So we're just going to record this for future people who are not able to be with us today, so we can share this out. But yeah, we're so grateful that all of you are here, and we're really glad to be sharing about the work that we have been doing with the SEER Student Coalition and the new direction that we are going with our strategy and on clean energy. So by the end of this presentation, you will have learned a bit more about our strategy, as I said, for a clean and just energy transition and how we are advocating for that, and why we are moving in this direction, what prompted us to choose this, as well as how you as SEER Club staff and volunteers can work with us, and maybe there's ways to partner and support each other's work and go further with this work on clean energy together. And at the end, we'll try to have some time for questions and any comments that you want to share. And I see that we have other folks joining. So welcome. We are just getting started with this presentation about Seize the Grid and SEER Student Coalition's work. So why don't we keep moving on? Great. So why this moment in time? And I wanted to share just really quickly that I first found the SEER Student Coalition when I was a sophomore in college. So I have been with SEER Club and SEER Student Coalition for pretty much my entire adult life. I was a sophomore in college when I found a SEER Student Coalition group on my campus. So I have seen SEER Student Coalition accomplish amazing things through our trainings like SPROG and through our campaigns like Campuses Beyond Coal. And I was involved in both of those as a student. But there always seemed to be something missing in what we were aligning to as a network, where we had this profound community and these contributions to our movement. But what was the greater vision and the set of values that was guiding us to be in community together and continue our work? So it was this longing that called the SEER Student Coalition staff team, as well as our executive committee of volunteers, to work together and partner together on a strategic planning process. And we spent about 10 months really digging in on these questions around how could we have the greatest impact on justice and climate change. So this was also at a point when we saw that we could also contribute to the SEER Club going further on goals of 100% clean energy, and doing so in a just and equitable manner. So again, for 10 months, we worked closely with our executive committee of volunteers and clarified the SSC's direction. So we're going to share with you about our strategy and our vision. So if you go to the next page. Before we dive into what our vision is as the SEER Student Coalition, again, that came out of the last year we did of strategic planning, we wanted to hear from you and invite you to share what is your vision for your own life, for your family, for your community. So if you're comfortable, I invite you to take a second and close your eyes and just reflect on a dream you have for your community. Maybe this has to do with your family or the state or town that you live in. What is something that you would just love to see happen in your community or for your family? So once you've got that in mind, open your eyes, and we'd love to hear, what is it that you are dreaming about? Julian, would you love to kick us off? Do you want to unmute? Great, we think we unmuted you if you want to share.
Okay, can you hear me?
You can.
Oh, okay. Well, gosh, the first thing that popped to my mind, I grew up in a conservative town in the South, and, where there's a lot of resistance to, renewable energy, and and there's a lot of resistance to change in general. And I think it's really important for younger voices to be the voice of that change, and and to drive that forward. I think it's really meaningful if that happens on the community level. Especially in communities where I come from, or where I came from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you have some young people in mind in your own life as you're reflecting on that?
I do. Like, I'm just thinking about people that, the people I grew up with now have kids, and how their kids are so excited about the future, and about, they're also scared about the future too. And so just giving them voice and amplifying their voice.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And is that Celeste that we have on the phone as well?
Yeah, I apologize. I don't know why it came up as Thomas, and I was like, I don't know who Thomas is. Yeah, so my name is Celeste. I'm a Beyond Coal organizer in the state of Illinois. And when I was envisioning my community, I guess I thought a lot about my family and just being outside. And as you continue talking, I thought about like the people that represent us. Here in the town I'm organizing, it's 70% Latino African American. Yet we only have one alderman of color. We do now have a mayor of color, most really recently. But just thinking about, who represents the community that I work and live in is what came to mind.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, because as we reflect on that, we can also reflect on what we'd love to change about that. Thank you. And Ivy, what were you reflecting on? I saw some smiles appear for you. And we'll unmute you.
Yeah, I have to unmute myself.
Great.
So I live in an area that's really still suburban sprawl, and they're trying very hard to change it. And so I think about the sort of holistic community. We'd like it to be walkable and bikeable, and be places that are vibrant, that people want to live and work in the same place. And so this is a grand experiment here in Tyson, Virginia. But that's if we're successful, then we've got we will be reducing everybody's carbon footprint and making our lives just so much more pleasant. So that's what I think on.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'm appreciating the personal touch each of you are bringing to this work and reflecting on where you grew up or where you are currently located. Thank you. And now we wanted to share SSC's vision. So could I get one person to read this out loud for me?
We can't actually read the whole thing because
Video's in the way. Can you see it now?
We have our pictures in the way.
Oh no.
Are you able to see the full thing now?
No.
So I think you can actually move where the pictures are. So if you click on them, you can drag them to a more convenient spot.
Oh, okay.
And while you all figure that out, why don't I go ahead and read this out loud and we can reflect on it together. So our vision, the Sierra Student Coalition, is a network of youth committed to justice and equity for humanity and the environment. We strive for an economic, social, and political transition to a world in which all people may thrive through a changing climate. We believe in humanity as part of a global ecosystem, connected in transforming the institutions which perpetuate unjust exploitation. We act for the wellness of our generation and future generations. So we just invite you to hold that and keep that present with you as we move through this presentation. This is what is guiding the SSC's work. So I'm going to pass it over to Tim now to share more about our strategy.
Excellent. Thanks, Anastasia. So, if you think about this vision, this is a pretty ambitious vision. It's a holistic vision. One thing that's really important to us is that we really live our values of justice and equity throughout our work, that we don't see our work as strictly about having a clean and healthy natural environment, but having a place that is just and equitable for all of us, a place where we can all survive and thrive, as we've said here. And we realized that to bring about this vision, we needed to rethink our strategic analysis and our power analysis. The way we were going about our work, we really wanted to achieve this ambitious and holistic vision. So a couple things I'll bring in just as to kind of provide a foundation for understanding our strategy. Some of you may be familiar with this model of 4 levels of power. Sarah Hodgson has been sharing this a lot in different spaces, also different folks from the organizing department. I'm not going to go into detail here, but I do want to just highlight that we often think about the power that we wield as a grassroots organization really just around this one: winning policies, right? We need to have a specific policy and advocate and achieve that policy, and that's our focus. And while that's really important and powerful work, we really have been appreciating this 4th level of power here, ethical and epistemic power. Recognizing that in order to have, to transition our energy system as quickly as we need to prevent catastrophic climate change, and also to transition it in a way that is just and equitable at its core, we need to be changing the story around our energy system and the story around climate change. So a lot of Seize the Grid is about building a movement. It's not just about winning policies, though we do hope, we do intend to push for good policy change. It's about engaging people in an important dialogue and pulling people in, transmitting a narrative that's about the urgency and the importance of an energy transition that is just and equitable and 100% clean. And just one more kind of fundamental theory for us has to do with the way that we view power. So we've come around to this idea that there are 2 views of power. There's monolithic power, which holds that the decision makers, the formal decision makers of our society, have ultimate power over what happens and what doesn't happen. And then there's this other view of power, social view of power, that says that actually it's up to all of us, all the people who participate in society, to shape the direction that we're headed in. Monolithic power, this is generally where we focused in the past, right? So if you're organizing from a view of monolithic power, you're always focusing on the people at the top. You're trying to elect good decision makers and then push them to make good decisions. And this is traditionally how the SSC has done our work, through mobilizing and lobbying and grassroots campaigning that's been focused on getting campus presidents and community leaders to make good decisions. In order to achieve this epistemic level of power, we're now organizing with a social view, which holds that really all of us, every moment, every day, we're making active choices that can shift the direction of things or keep things going the way that they're headed. So the way to leverage social power really is about withholding our participation in a system that isn't serving us, isn't living up to our values, with the goal of shifting public opinion and engaging as many people as possible as active participants.
Sweet. So now I'm going to, and if you have questions coming up, please jot those down. We'll have some space at the end to talk about questions. So if you have questions, please write them down. We'd love to hear them. I'm going to talk a little bit about Seize the Grid strategy specifically, now that Tim's given an introduction to how we view sort of our theory of change or our overarching power analysis. So Seize the Grid, our strategy. I'm going to start us off with our goal, which we refer to as our grand strategic objective. And that's all those who stand for justice and equity and their support for utility companies that burn fossil fuels and exploit our communities, thereby creating the conditions for a just transition to community-owned clean energy. And there's a few things I want to note about this. So the idea behind a grand strategic objective in this more social view of power, movement building framework is that this is kind of the big line in the sand around which folks are organizing. So what we really seek to do here with this strategic objective is to really change the political weather around climate and energy justice so that there's political will for a just transition and also for moving to clean energy on the timeline in which we need it and in the way in which would be just and equitable for communities. So the way that we aim to do this or contribute to that, because we know that we're not the only folks working on that, there are many, many folks working on that. But our contribution is we really aim to help create a moral crisis around the current utility business model in this country and really seek to drive a wedge between institutions that say they stand for justice and equity. So for example, schools, colleges, religious institutions, and driving a wedge between those and the utilities that they have contracts with. A couple of other things I'll highlight is that we know this is a really bold demand, and that's the intent. So we really want to be drawing this clear line in the sand that we can then polarize and activate the public around. So thinking of it as more of like a transformational goal rather than an instrumental policy. And a couple of things that I'll end with is some questions that we had in consideration in developing this. So one is it popular and inspiring? Is it really a visionary goal that we want to go after? Does shifting the public around this feel possible in 3 to 5 years, recognizing that other folks are organizing on this? And then would it shift the terrain of what's possible? And I think for us, like Tim mentioned, feeling this urgency around really needing to both transition in a way that's just and also transition faster, us wanting to help contribute in this way. So here's a photo from some Seize the Grid organizers, youth organizers in Puerto Rico. And I just wanted to share a little bit more about kind of what this looks like on the ground. So we see young folks, primarily high school and college-aged folks, engaging with a variety of different allies and audiences across generational lines to really create this critical mass of active support for climate and energy justice solutions. So some examples of what Seize the Grid strategy looks like in practice. One example could be high schoolers in partnership with parents and teachers demanding an end to their high school's support for utilities that burn fossil fuels and exploit communities. Another example is young members of religious institutions, such as their church or their mosque or their synagogue, withdrawing their support for their institution because of their support for utilities and burning fossil fuels. And the final example is young workers calling on places like Walmart or Target to both support the right to organize and a $15 hour minimum wage, and also stop supporting utilities that burn dirty energy. And now I'll hand it over to Anastasia to talk more about our structure and our principles that underlie all of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we've just heard a lot of information about our strategy and the underlying, theory behind our strategy. And so what is the structure that's upholding this network of young people engaging in this movement for a just clean energy transition? And what are the principles that are guiding our work alongside of our vision? So you've picked up on this probably from your familiar interactions with Sierra Student Coalition, but Seize the Grid is about building a national network, national across the continental US and as well as in Puerto Rico. And we're working with high school and college students, supporting them to build out their own campaign groups and guide their own campaigns that are pushing on this issue of energy justice. And as Carissa is mentioning, you know, creating that like wedge like between the utility companies and their, at this point, their educational institutions. And so we wanted to share about the two ways that we're building this network in practice. So we showed you a picture of a tremendous group of students in Puerto Rico, in Ponce, Puerto Rico, at the Pontifical Catholic University of Puerto Rico. This is one area that we consider to be an area where the students and young people are going really deep with this strategy. They have really taken it and made it their own. And in Puerto Rico, there's a number of outrageous economic and social issues also facing the people of that country, as well as a tremendous energy crisis. And I have personally been inspired by the way that the students we work with are bridging all of these issues, you know, making these connections between all of the different issues that people are facing in Puerto Rico as they push for a just and equitable and local transition to 100% clean energy. And so that's one example of a spot where young people will be going deep with this work and really playing out what does it look like to push our communities, push the public around this issue. In other places in Wisconsin, across the University of Wisconsin system, students are saying yes to Seize the Grid and actually coming together to work across campuses to push not just one campus in the state, but the entire state more towards 100% clean energy and really continually raising this issue of energy democracy, community-owned clean energy being how we do this transition. But we also know that while that work that's going really deep on the ground that's incredibly important, what's just as important is having opportunities for people to engage on a bit more of the broad level. So we also have an aspect of our network that will just be the kind of broad engagement, people taking part in mass actions across the country, either to support local work or pushing this issue on a national level. This is a chance to really instill our values and our narrative and our vision into a larger swath of young people across the country and get them into action on that so that then they're engaging people in their communities on it. Through this broad engagement, people can then use really small actions on their own part. You know, maybe they're just signing a pledge or you know, writing postcards, or maybe they're hosting some small event where they live. But then you build that together across the country and you've got this really powerful story and this powerful image of young people of really pushing on this issue of community-owned clean energy. As you look at this, you might realize that our network is very much embodying the principles of decentralization or distributed organizing. We really believe in the autonomy and the power of the local organizers, these students, to be making their own decisions. And that's why we spent a year designing a set of values, principles, and vision and strategy to guide this work so that we can hand that over to young people seeking to make a difference in their communities, and they get to be the drivers of this work. And we seek to really support and uplift that work and be partners in it. So I'm going to move on to then, you know, what are the values that are guiding this work on the national level and the local level? Guiding principles may or may not be a familiar concept to some of you. we see these as just a set of values that really define our movement. We see our principles as helping to create culture, just like create a really strong culture. It's demonstrating what kind of culture do we want to be in this movement. And we encourage every local campaign community, local campaign group, every organizer engaging with us to be using these and referencing them often, to be using these as the driving ethic behind our work. So what Carissa's sharing in the chat box right now is this set of guiding principles that we spent a year developing with our volunteers. And we invite you to read through those and see what resonates with you. Where do you see your own values showing up in our guiding principles? Where do you see these values taking shape in the work that you're doing? What are the principles that you and your community are holding in the work that you're doing? We see our guiding principles as creating this national unity across the country, so that we can all be guided by the same set of values and vision for the implementation of our strategy. So I invite you to open up that link, take a look at it, and read through our principles. And I'm going to pass it off to Carissa one more time to give you a look at what's coming up.
Thanks, Anastasia. So now that we've walked through what we like to refer to as our DNA, so the thing that will be replicated or is being replicated all across the country in Puerto Rico and really adapted for folks' local contexts. Now I'm going to just talk about what's coming ahead for us in the next year or so that folks have an idea of what SSC and Seize the Grid are going to be up to. So this summer, we're hosting some Seize the Grid specific trainings with these, as Anastasia mentioned, local campaign communities such as Puerto Rico and Wisconsin. So we'll be hosting trainings with them to really develop and support these young leaders. And then also preparing for some actions in the fall for those folks who are just new to getting involved with us. And then in the fall, spring, we're going to be doing we're launching actions for folks to take in their communities, and then also enrolling folks who really want to dig in deeper to launch and start local campaign communities where they live. And then moving into the summer, our plan is to host more summer trainings for those local campaign communities. So think of things similar to SPROG, if you've engaged with that before, but more focused on Seize the Grid and how to really support folks in becoming campaign leaders and have a clear pathway forward when they leave the program. So the last thing I'll touch on is just how can you all get involved? There's 3 key ways. If any of this sparks your interest, we would love to have you engage. One is asking young people in your life that might be interested in this work to take our Seize the Grid Pledge of Action, which is the key way to really say that you are willing to take action around this issue, and we will keep folks in the loop on opportunities to keep doing that. And you can sign it yourselves as well. The second is signing up to be an SSC and Seize the Grid supporter. So what that entails is those are folks who aren't students, but they love to share opportunities and actions that we have going on. And we will keep those folks in the loop about ways to either do things like sharing out actions that are happening with young people in your life and in your networks, maybe in your chapter or local organizing communities, potentially sponsoring folks to attend a training or an action, things like that. And then the last is if you want to explore potentially a deeper partnership, we would be open to that conversation. And would love to hear more about the work that you're doing locally and see if there are ways that we could potentially align and do deeper partnership together. And I can drop both of those links in the chat box as well for folks. Great. I just want to pause and thank all of you for spending like this hour with us and really hearing what we're up to and the work that we've been doing. I know that for some of you, if you're on the East Coast, it's the evening. Really appreciating just like the time that you all are spending with all of us today. And yeah, we wanted to leave some time at the end for any questions that folks had, reflections coming up. And also I'll drop both of those forms in the chat. And yeah, I'll pause for any questions, reflections, and reactions.
Hey, it's Ivy. Can you hear me?
We
Yeah.
can.
I was actually putting this into the chat box, but it doesn't seem like it's coming through. So I'll just ask. I've got actually two questions. One is,